right, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Today we're going to be talking about demystifying Matterport, Zillow 3D, Cubi-Casa, and iGuide. If you don't know what those are, first of all, you're in good company. There are a number of softwares out there, and it seems that they are ever changing. So you're in the perfect place. We're going to talk about all of those today. We're going to talk about 3D rendering and measurements and what they all mean both for you as an agent and for your clients. We're going to talk about what the most efficient ones are, how to stay out of trouble, and how to make these systems work for you. Matt has experience with all of them. Matt Harmon is the founder of Harmon Property Solutions. He is a valuable resource to us here, and he's an incredible presenter. So he's going to guide us through all of these. He is here, like I said, to be a resource to us. So as you have questions, feel free to chime in or drop them in the chat. We'll make sure to get all of those answered. And if you have experience with any of these, please chime in and share those experiences, whether they are good or have room for improvement. It's always nice to see what other people are doing in their business so that we can take that and leverage it in our own business. So Matt, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate your time as always.
Yeah, thank you so much. If you can allow me to share my screen, I'm going to share some slides. This is my favorite thing to talk about, so I'm excited about talking to you guys today. This is something that is pretty new for our market area, and not a lot of people are talking about it yet, so I do think it will be helpful. Okay, you guys can see that okay now? Okay, I see fireworks behind Kate. All right. All right, so we'll get started with this. And you guys, I would love for you to ask questions. Like Kate said, if there are things as we go along that you don't understand that I'm saying, I would love for you to pop in with questions, and Kate will let me know if there's stuff that shows up in the chat. Okay, so let me get this set. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk about a lot of different things today, a lot of the new 3D tours, and we're also going to talk about measurements because they are kind of part of this conversation. You all know that as listing agents and realtors, you're responsible for having precise square footage and that lots of decisions are made based on that square footage. We're going to start by actually talking about something that the Real Estate Commission published in November of 23, just to kind of set the foundation of where their head is at with square footage, because it does come into play with some of the things we're going to be talking about. Okay, so this came out in November of 2023. It's really dry, written by lawyers, and it did bring in some new perspective on measuring from the Real Estate Commission. So whenever they speak up about something like this, we want to see what are they saying, what are they talking about. So rather than go through this document piece by piece, it's kind of broken up into facts. You'll see here fact one, fact two, and fact three. That's how we're going to go through it. The first takeaway was that they don't require that square footage be advertised, but because our local MLS does, they require that it be accurate. So that's why there are parts of North Carolina where you don't actually have to share an exact square footage, but in our market area, we do. They said under this fact one that they can take disciplinary action for any agent that makes a willful or negligent misrepresentation of a material fact. So with willful, the example I like to give is, let's say Kate asked me to measure a house and the seller had said, hey, it's 3,000 square feet and we want to make sure we're not under 3,000 square feet. And I turn in a sketch that says it's 2,800 square feet. And Kate's like, you know what? I'm going to pretend like I didn't get that email. I'm just going to delete that. And I've got this old sketch from the seller that says 3,000 square feet. So we're going to go with that. Um, if the commission finds out you did that, that would be disciplined as a willful misrepresentation of the square footage. I gave a kind of extreme example. I've seen them disciplined for even more like you think it's 3,000. I turn in one that says 2,980 and you just round it up to 3,000. So they don't want any kind of willful misrepresentation of the square footage. Negligent would just be I didn't do the right thing to determine the square footage. And that can look lots of different ways. That can look like an agent that loves measuring their own listings and they go out and they just mismeasure it. That would be negligence. Another way negligence could look is you hire someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Maybe they told you they know what they're doing, but they made a big mistake on their sketch and they just, you know, you don't see it, you don't catch it. That would be negligence. And we'll talk about that a little bit too, about like what they expect of you as an agent and catching those mistakes. The second key takeaway from the bulletin was that misrepresentation was very high on their list of common complaints. It was number 2 on the list, actually. They said that agents must either measure or hire a professional. So if you like to measure, you can do that, but you can also hire a professional. Does not have to be an appraiser. I know that's a question that comes up a lot, but that is not a requirement. The word appraiser is mentioned a few times in the little yellow booklet, but it's not a requirement. It can be your dog catcher or a mail person, as long as they know how to measure by the real estate commission guidelines. Agents are expected to recognize an obvious error. That one is a little scary because they don't give a lot of instruction on like how you would do that. Um, a good example of this would be, let's say you hire someone to measure and you were expecting it to be 1,600 square feet, but you get a sketch bag that says 2,000 square feet. And what they did was include the 2-car garage in the living area instead of doing something, just going to your seller and saying, "Hey, great news. I know you thought it was 1,600. It's actually 2,000," and then just going to market with it, that would be a problem. That's an obvious error that they would expect you to recognize. 100 square foot error, I don't know. They don't really say. They just say recognize an obvious error. They expect you to know what a 2,500 square foot house feels like, such that if you're walking through it on the list side or the buy side, you'll be able to, feel that and recognize an error if it was advertised a different way. Anyone measuring a house must use the Real Estate Commission guidelines or ANSI standards. That's no change. But this last one is a change. And this opened up a real can of worms. When measuring a house, you can use a tape measure, a laser device, or an app on your cell phone. The tape measure is not new. That's how I learned 18 years ago. Laser device is not new. We've been using that for quite a bit. But an app on a cell phone is a change. And this is where we connect into the 3D tours that we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to talk more about that in a minute, but that was a big change for them to mention that. And then the last point, they said it was really just about where you put the numbers in the MLS. It really matters to them. If you have a home with a basement, they don't want you crowding all those numbers into the living area above grade box. If you have splits, make sure you put those in the right boxes. And then they clarified that living area must be permitted. Um, they've in the past been a little bit less clear about this, but I feel like in this bulletin, they were pretty clear that it needs to be separately identified. And when I've spoken with the commission directly, they've said that they do want it separated out. So that was the third point on that. All right, so this is the bulletin they put out. And what I've noticed about the commission is when they put out a bulletin or they say something new about something or just reminders, they tend to go behind that and pop people with disciplinary actions. Um, so I want to talk about what those have looked like since they put out that document. I've got some from this year and some from last year that we'll look at. So the ones from this year, these came out. You may have seen these. I know everybody loves to read the disciplinary actions. Um, I tried to remove the person's name so we wouldn't know who it was, but the highlighted part is kind of the relevant part of these disciplinary actions that took place. Then this first one, the agent misrepresented the square footage. They hired a photographer who was not licensed as an appraiser or a real estate broker to provide measurements, and they failed to review the advertising and measurements for accuracy. After the purchase, the buyer discovered the advertised square footage percentage was greater than the actual square footage. So we're going to talk about that some, like why would they hire a photographer? We're going to talk about why that is and what's going on there. It's related to the app on the cell phone piece we just talked about. And then in the second one, the commission reprimanded someone. They hired a professional measuring company. They used a LiDAR measuring system. We'll talk about what that is to calculate the square footage. And then the agent advertised in MLS that the subject property was 3,187, and that included 960 square feet on the second floor that was actually an attic. So we will talk about that. How could that happen? These from last year I thought were kind of interesting. In this first one, this happened in Buncombe County. The agent hired a vendor to create drawings of the subject property. The vendor noted on the renderings that the measurements are approximate and that the actual measurements may vary. Despite this notice on the drawing, the agent failed to verify the square footage. All right, we will talk about that, like what's going on there. In the second one, this is a disciplinary action on the buy side, which is new and a little scary, and I wanted to include this one. The buyer's agent was disciplined on this because the buyers received an appraisal report that revealed a discrepancy in the square footage compared to what was in the MLS, and the agent failed to verify the square footage of the subject property prior to closing. I don't know anything more than this. This is just what was put in the real estate commission. So how I tried to piece this together is that the buyer's agent must have known, hey, there's a problem with this square footage, and they didn't do anything about it. They just let it go all the way to closing. That's the only thing I can figure out on this one, knowing what I know here. And then this last one, the third one, the listing agent advertised that the property had a square footage in excess of what was shown by a subsequent listing broker and appraiser. Agent failed to retain calculation documents used to determine square footage. I think the translation of that is they just didn't get it measured, so they didn't have any paperwork to show the real estate commission. That's just a guess, though. Okay, so before we move on, I wanted to talk about this because the commission said something new about measuring, then they popped people about it for the past 2 years. So we want to understand where they are at with square footage, its accuracy, how people are determining it. Any questions before we move into the next section about how this is working, what's happening here? All right, we'll keep going. Um, Measuring technology. So when I learned how to measure homes back in 2007, we measured with a clipboard, paper, and 100-foot tape that we would roll up. It was bad. It was really hard. And we would draw it on paper. And it had to be somewhat to scale, or we would run out of paper. And then we would take that home and redraw it into a computer. That moved to just drawing into an iPad and using a tape measure. Or actually, I think we're using a laser device first. So we used a laser device and paper, and then we went to using a laser device straight into an iPad. And then the third way for measuring that people are using to measure is using a scanning device or a phone to scan the property. So the big takeaway I want you to have is that there are two camps for creating sketches in our market, and really nationally, this is true as well. But this is new. This is not the way things have always been. They certainly haven't been this way in the past 18 years for me as I've been doing this. There are manually measured homes, and then there are homes that are measured by scanning technology. So I want you to understand what both of those are so that you can recognize them. We'll talk first about manual measurement. So this is where you either use a tape measure or a laser device and you draw every single line of the property. And one of the benefits of this method is that as you're going through a house, you can kind of pass every space you're in through the filter of the real estate commission. So you walk into a room, you're looking at the ceiling heights, we're looking at the finished materials, we're looking at is it heated? Everything that the commission expects us to know, we're looking at in a room when we are manually measuring a house. One of the downsides to this method is that you have to measure it no matter how weird the shape. So if you've got, a house shaped like a starfish, you just have to figure it out. If you have rounded walls, like a nice bow window on the back of a house, that's more complicated when you're manually measuring the lines. Any kind of curve or angled line is going to create challenges and slow someone down. Um, this is typically the method used by appraisers and by professional measuring services. That picture there is a picture of me holding my laser device and iPad, kind of showing what it looks like. Um, this is what that can look like. This is a detailed floor plan that someone drew. And the giveaway that someone manually measured a house is a table that looks like this. As we talk about this, I know you're going to be wondering, like, well, how do we know if it was scanned or measured? There is not one single thing I can tell you, but this is kind of your biggest giveaway or one of the biggest. Um, this little total sketch by a la mode, you'll see that on a lot of sketches. That is our appraiser software. So this comes right out of appraisal software. And this table that shows every single area and the calculations, this is just, to me, it's kind of a giveaway that someone manually measured the space. That's just how the software looks. All right, so irregular designs, like I said, difficult when you show up to a house like this and you have to manually measure every line. You just have to figure it out. All of these arced lines and this, we call this the rhinoceros, because it's got this big horn here. This is a condo in Chapel Hill. Some of you may have been in this building, but you just have to figure it out. The arced lines, the angled lines, just takes a while, right? And there's room for mistake there. We had this house, I think 2 years ago up in Wake Forest. I had heard about geodesic domes for years, had never seen one, and finally I got to see one up close. So one of my team members showed up to this house to measure it, and he did his best going around the first floor, but eventually just kept getting stuck. He's like, I'm 2 feet off. The drawing's not closing. Matt, can you help me out on this? I don't know what's going on. So we just have to figure it out. We can't tell our client, I'm sorry, we don't measure homes of that shape when we're manually measuring a house. We just have to figure it out. This one had unique angles at every point. They were related to the angle before them, but they were all unique. And then the second floor had this area that was under 5 feet that we had to take out. That was complicated to figure out. Then there was a third floor loft that was also complicated. So this is a downside of manually measuring is you've got to figure out the geometry of it. All right, shifting gears. We're getting into now like the 3D technology. This is new. This is the scanning technology to scan and create a floor plan. This method, it involves either using a proprietary camera like Matterport or just an app on your cell phone. And these four are the four big players in our market area. This one at the top right, this Matterport, you all may have seen a Matterport camera that someone's been using. You can do a scan with other cameras, but this is kind of their proprietary device. iGuide here on the bottom right, they also have a proprietary device that they have their people use. CubiCasa, all you need is a phone, and it's an app on a cell phone. Zillow 3D Home, you can use a cell phone app or you can use a 3D camera, either one, to collect that information. They use image capturing or LiDAR. Remember, we saw LiDAR show up in a disciplinary action. That's because someone was using one of these devices. So that's how it captures it. So the difference between like video or image capture and LiDAR is that with image capture, you're just taking pictures and then you're using those pictures to get the measurements and the data. With LiDAR, the phone is sending out thousands and millions of data points at all times, collecting everything it's touching and then feeding that back into the app. And so it's supposed to be a little more accurate that way. Um, there are some benefits to this method for sure, this scanning method. Um, one of the biggest ones is that anyone could do it. I could have anyone on this call download the app on their phone and go measure that rhinoceros condo in 10 minutes. I could have you completely trained and ready to go in 10 minutes. Huge benefit. The complexity of the design is not an issue because when you're scanning, all it cares about is catching those points and feeding those into the computer. It doesn't care if they're rounded or angled or a square. It doesn't matter. The final product looks really great. It looks like blueprints, and we'll look at what some of those look like. So those are all huge benefits to the scanning method. Some of the drawbacks to the method is that it is dependent upon the operator to notice areas that are not living area. That phrase is directly from the Real Estate Commission in that bulletin that they put out. They put this in there. Um, and what they mean by this is that when you are the operator and you're waving a cell phone through a house to measure it or to scan it, the device doesn't know the Real Estate Commission guidelines, especially things like, is this room heated? Are the ceiling heights as high as they need to be? So the operator or the holder of the cell phone or the operator of the Matterport camera has to know those things or the sketch will be wrong. One of the problems is it's not possible to mark the areas as non-living area when you're going through the house. So we've done a lot of testing with CubiCasa. That's the one that's the most prevalent in our market area. And when you're scanning an area, you're walking through it with your cell phone, and let's say you walk out onto a screen porch and you're scanning it and it's got like maybe the vinyl windows in there and you want to flag it as non-living area because you don't want to, it to scan it like it's a living area because you know it's not. There is no way to do anything. You're just basically taking a video. So what you have to do is remember the next day on that one that you scanned to take out that screen porch. And part of the problem is that if you are a provider that is doing these scans, let's say you're doing 5 of them a day, and that screen porch situation happens at 9 a.m. on a Monday, you get the sketches back 8 o'clock Tuesday morning, you have to remember all of the areas that you encountered in those 5 houses the day before that were non-living area. which as you can imagine is really difficult. Unless you're stopping and like making a note or you have an assistant that's following you and kind of making notes, it's really, really hard to remember. The third thing is that it doesn't include wall thicknesses correctly. This technology, because you're scanning the inside of a building, all it knows is when it touches an outside wall, it adds like about zero point 0.3 or zero point 0.4 for the wall thickness. Um, Eventually, I'm guessing they will figure this out with this technology, but for right now, any house that has brick, stone, built by 2x6 instead of 2x4 on the exterior walls, any of those homes are going to be incorrect because you're going to lose all of that. Imagine you had a house where the walls are a foot thick all the way around, which is not uncommon in this area. So you've got a 1 foot thick wall, but the scanning app is only giving you zero point 0.3. So that means zero point 0.7 of that is just lost square footage. So zero point 0.7 all the way around the perimeter of like a 5,000 square foot house, you're going to be underrepresenting the square footage by at least 100 square feet, maybe more than that. And that's just lost. That's lost from your commission, lost to the seller. If you're measuring like a townhome or like maybe a manufactured home like a trailer, it's going to be pretty accurate, right? Because all those walls are predictably even. They're all about zero point 0.3 or zero point 0.4 thick. You're going to be fine on that. But anything outside of that, it is going to be incorrect on the wall thicknesses. And then the last thing is there is a disclosure on the bottom of all of these sketches that indicate that they should not be used as a square footage source. We'll take a look at what these look like. You may remember in one of the disciplinary actions, someone got disciplined because the sketch they had, it said it's approximate, it needs to be verified. They didn't verify it, and so they got disciplined when it had an error. These are four examples. This one here is from iGuide. These two I know are from Cubi-Casa. This one might be from Matterport. I'm not sure. But in fine print, so small that you probably can't see it, down at the bottom, it says these four phrases up here that I've blown up. Basically, all of them say the same thing. The dimensions and size are approximate. You need to verify it, which is great. This is definitely like these companies covering themselves. It's a CYA, so they're not sued later for errors. But what's not great is that the users of these scans are just going straight to market with these numbers. They're being given a sketch like this, and you can see like on this one, it says 3177 square feet, and they just go directly into the MLS with 3177 square feet, and they don't verify it, which is a problem. So why is this happening? I, my personal opinion is that it's because it's close enough. This is technology that's been being developed for years, and they got it close enough to be ready for market, and it is a very powerful solution to a problem that both realtors and photographers have. As a realtor, the problem you have is that you are required by the commission to measure your listings. Okay. So people solve that problem in a number of ways. They learn how to measure homes themselves. They hire someone to measure their listings, or they get a technology like this that solves that problem. Okay, the commission said I have to get it measured. I am getting it measured. I'm using this device. The other person that it solves a problem for is a photographer. There are many companies in our area that only do real estate photography, but they've wanted to be able to offer home measurements and be like an all-in-one service like our company, but they just didn't know how to measure a home. Well, now they have a way. They can just get this app and they can scan it, and now they can sell measurements and floor plans to their realtor clients. So how much is this happening? Um, I looked at a couple of neighborhoods, looked at my neighborhood, Falls River. I looked at the attachments to see where are the measurements coming from in this neighborhood. And this navy quarter here is the ones that were scans. So 25% of the listings for that year in 2023, the source of the square footage was a scan. Okay, I looked at Headingham as well. And this gray quadrant down here, this was the scans. This orange one is the manually measured. Back in Falls River, that was the same here. This big orange one, these were manually measured. But again, 1 out of 4 listings in our market area, based on what I've looked at. I've looked at a couple of neighborhoods since then, and I've seen anywhere between 20 and 25% is the average, even as high as 30% in some neighborhoods. This is where they're coming from. The numbers you're seeing listed in the MLS are not coming from an actual measurement anymore. They're coming from one of these scans. So it's happening quite a bit, and you could see from the real estate commission disciplinary actions, they are disciplining people for it. They are aware this is happening. When there are problems, they are showing up and asking questions about it. I want to show you all a few case studies of this before we get into our next topic, but I want to pause for just a second because we've gone over a lot in terms of manually measured houses and scanned houses, and I want to open it up for any questions that you all may have.
I have a few questions. I'm sure other people
Go
do
for it.
as well, so you guys chime in as well. I the first one was about lost square footage on exterior
Mhm.
walls. Um, I guess the disclosure that goes with both of my questions is it's been a while since I was in pre-licensing, and I feel like that's kind of the case with most agents, right? Like we're taught how to measure homes in pre-licensing, and then we get into it, and most of us start on the buy side, and then when you get a listing, you like you said, you hire someone to do this and you're like, oh, thank God, didn't have to like actually do that. Right. And so it's
Yeah.
been a while. This very well could be something I should know. But exterior walls, like how is that lost square footage? Are we technically supposed to be measuring from like the inside of the property to the exterior wall? And so that whatever, like where all of our insulation and stuff is technically something we should be measuring? Or can you just explain
This
that?
is a great question. I'll explain it. Yeah. So there are three kinds of properties in residential properties. There are detached homes, attached townhomes, and condominiums. Condominiums are the only one of those three that you measure the airspace only. So you just measure to the painted surface that you have. Okay. Townhomes and detached homes in North Carolina, they are measured to the outermost edge of the structure. Meaning, if you have a house with 3 foot thick stone walls, there's a condo in North Raleigh where they were built that way, but imagine that was a house and the walls were 3 feet thick. In North Carolina, the square footage goes all the way to the outermost edge of that surface. So the way we do this when we're measuring houses, we measure the first floor from the outside. We're measuring that outside surface, and then we measure the upstairs and we add for the wall thickness. So we have to determine, hey, how thick is this wall? Is it 0.4, which is like a normal stud wall? Is it 0.7, which is our normal like brick plus studs? Was it built with 2x6s plus brick? Well, that's going to be more like zero point 0.8 or zero point 0.9. Was it built with block and then studs and then sheetrock? That's going to be more like 1.1 feet. We have to determine that for every single house.
Wow. And that's important to know too, because I can imagine if you don't have that knowledge, then getting something back that says like the stone wall, for example, if that was 3 feet, getting something back
Yeah.
and being like, well, no, that's not the square footage. Like this is the only usable space inside this home. Like they must have gotten it wrong. So that's good information to know,
Yeah, one of the
especially.
most common questions we get is someone will get one of our sketches and they'll go through and add up all of the room dimensions. And they'll come back and say, hey, I think your guys messed this up because I added up the bedroom being 10 by 10 and the family room being 20 by 20 and the kitchen being 10 by 15. And I'm coming up like 300 square feet short of the number that you gave me. And that's the reason why this doesn't work. We go to the outside edge, and those room dimensions typically are not going to include things like hallways, the wall thickness, bathrooms, closets. All of those things are just inside that envelope of the outside edge. So that's the number that matters. When you look at a sketch, that dark black line that goes around the outside, that's what determines the square footage.
That's awesome. That matters a lot because I've certainly had that too, where I get one back and I tally it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that doesn't quite
Yeah.
make
All
sense.
right. It never will be.
And so my next question could very well be the direction you're headed in terms of answer. So if so, just tell me to sit tight. But my question is, like you said, it says at the bottom of all of those, basically like these are close, but should be verified, something along those lines. I too
Mhm.
always assumed that was a disclosure to cover their bases. And you're like, well, I've hired this person. If we as agents are supposed to come behind them, what is the right way to verify that while still being confident that you're doing it the correct way? Like if I walked into that geodome house, like I would have no idea if you were close or not, So obviously
Yeah.
that's kind of an outlier, right? But what is your recommendation for agents in terms of going behind and double checking? Is it just like learn how to measure and make sure you're doing it yourself for all of them? Or like what should
Not
we do
really.
if we hear that but don't really know how to?
Yeah, we're going to get into that a bit because I hope that everyone on this call that's watching, their wheels are spinning about, well, I've seen these scans in the MLS. I've taken buyers to houses that have scans like this. Maybe you've used them on your own listings. So I hope you're starting to think about, yeah, how would I know the difference? We're going to look at some sketches in a minute that I promise you, even I would not be able to know that there was an error. You look at it and I'll show you how I figured out there was an error, but when you look at it, you would think, this is great. This looks right and there's no problem here. And part of the problem with this that I see in our market area is the real estate commission has said you can do this. They said you can use a tape measure, a laser device, or an app on your cell phone. Okay. Okay. So you're a great realtor, Kate, and you do those. You say, you know what, I'm going to go with number three. I'm going to hire my photographer and they are going to use this scan and I'm going to pay them $100 and they're going to hand me back a sketch and I've checked that box for the commission. I did the thing I'm supposed to do. The the problem is people don't know that the commission expects you to verify that number. That number you're getting from the photographer is really just a visual representation of the house. It's not meant to be used as the listing square footage. So we'll talk a bit about what are you supposed to do both on the list side and the buy side to protect yourself because that's a massive amount of liability. The people that are doing this, if you think about a quarter of the listings in our market having a scan, and in my opinion, they're mostly underrepresenting the square footage. They're mostly leaving square footage on the floor that no one's getting in their commission and you're not getting, the seller's not getting. When people go to sell those houses in 3, 5 years, whenever, they're going to have a surprise in the square footage. And it's either going to be a happy surprise, like, oh, wow, it's bigger than it was advertised, or it's going to be a sad surprise, like, oh, they scanned it and they included a garage as living area. They included a screen porch as living area. Wait a minute, who was my buyer's agent on this? I'm going to call them. Like, they should have known about this. Who was the listing agent on this? We want to go sue them because they used this scanning device and the commission has said you have to verify it and they didn't verify it. We need to see their proof that they verified it. So that's kind of the path I see this going down over the next few years is litigation, people coming after both sides of the agents because the square footage just wasn't accurate.
I'm excited to dive into it because the the other concern that I have is if it's something that we're not overly confident in terms of measurement, then how do you know which one trumps the other in terms of being correct or closer to correct? And anyway, so
Yep,
those are the proactive
that's a
problems.
that's a great question. Um, I've always said that it's funny, like the commission, there's this 5% number that floats around, like you need to be within 5%. 5% of what? What is the real? What is the standard? Many people think appraisers are. I can say as an appraiser, there are many appraisers that are not good at measuring, don't like it. I wouldn't trust their sketches at all. So um, it's just person to person. Like I'm very passionate about it. It's why I said I was excited to talk to you about this because it intersects with one of my areas of passion, which is accuracy and measurements. Um, it's a great question. There is no standard. Every home out there, if you had 10 people measure it, it's going to be 10 different numbers. But there are some things you can look for, and I want to talk to you guys about some of those just so you're protected going forward. Um, any other questions from anyone else before we get into some of these actual examples?
Carol put one in the chat. Carol, do you want to pop one and ask it, or would you like for me to read it?
I just put as a professional engineer, I've measured homes for years with my husband holding the stick on the outside. Since he's died, I cannot easily measure the outside, although inside walls are very easy because I use my laser. Is there any
Hmm.
way to get a legitimate measurement on the outside by myself?
Yes. Um,
Could you
you'd have
share
to
that,
find,
please?
yeah. Using a laser, this was our biggest fear when we first switched over from a tape to a laser because with the 100-foot tape, you could hook that edge on to like the edge of the house and walk down and hold it. And we were worried about like a house with like a flat side with nothing on it. Like, what are we going to do? And I will tell you, I've measured, tens of thousands of homes with a laser. There's always something to hit. And when there's not something to hit, I'll put a clipboard or something on the side of the house, like down by the ground, and then I'll shoot back to that. So some of the things that I use is I'll use gutters I'll use electric meter boxes because a lot of times it is the side or the back of the house that's
Right.
just a flat surface. I use gutters, meter boxes. I'll use windowsills. If it's brick and it's got that windowsill that sticks out, I'll shoot to that. Um, because with a laser, you don't have to get it in one measurement. You just get to something and then you add a little bit for the thing you shot to, and then you add for the rest of it. You can take 10 measurements across the back of a house. As long as you're going to something and you know what you're going to and you can shoot and piece it from that. So the answer is yes. All of my team members measure by themselves. They all measure with a laser. We've measured 50,000 plus homes. They've all been with a laser. So it
Yeah.
can be done. In
My
the
issue
weird,
is when you have bushes totally
yeah,
against the house for a third of the house.
yes. When that happens, we'll measure from the inside and then we'll measure the wall thickness at a door or a window and then add those wall thicknesses just like we would do on the second floor of a house.
Oh, okay. I didn't even think of that. Thank you so much.
Sure, of
Yeah,
course.
I'm adamant about being precise also, and so I just refused to try to do it until I could figure out how to do it.
That's
Thank
the
you.
way.
Thank
Sure.
you.
All right, let's keep going. Be thinking about questions. I would love to discuss this. I know that all of this information is a lot and it's probably somewhat confusing and overwhelming if you haven't heard of these things or talked about it with anyone. So I want to answer those questions. What we've got here is an example of a scan that someone did on a house. A client reached out to us and had us go back and measure it again because they thought there was an error with the square footage. So with this one, the scan is on the left. This thing in the middle is kind of the math behind the scan. This comes out of CubiCasa, and you can get this thing from the provider. They don't normally send it to the client, but it kind of shows the thinking behind the scan on the left. And then on the far right is the floor plan that we drew. So the problem with this one is that on here, this room back here is called a sunroom. Here it's called other room, and here it's called screened porch. So whoever scanned this, when they scanned it, they just walked out there and held the phone around and then forgot to take it out as non-living area the next day when they got the scan back. And it made them misrepresent the square footage by about 375 square feet, which is a lot. It's almost 10%. It's not an almost 10% error and is plenty to get in trouble with the real estate commission. If you were to receive this, though, and this is what I was saying earlier, like, how are you supposed to know? If you were to get this scan, can you all tell how you would know you had a problem just by looking at that?
Well, one way to be to look at the walls that are drawn. Um, the walls show up different on the scanned area.
That's right. They are it's almost all put in as windows. That's
Right,
one good thing to look at. It would at least make you think about, okay, sunroom windows kind of make sense, but yes, you can tell that it looks different. That black line there is the same as this black line,
right.
but it is separated by windows. Really, the only thing that anyone could definitively tell there was a problem was that word sunroom. If you get this back as the client, as the agent, your photographer sends you this and says, here's the sketch I did for you, and there's your square footage. And you're looking through this and you're looking and saying, okay, garage, that makes sense. Walk-in closet, that makes sense. When you get to this room and you see the word sunroom, that's when something should go off in your head and think, you know what, that's not a sunroom, that's a screen porch. Now, you wouldn't know from looking at this if it was included or not. You would have to have this that shows that the green areas are the living area. So it's a little tricky. It is scary. Let's look at this next one. So this is a ranch with a basement. They had converted a little tiny, like foot and a half wide door to a linen closet into a stairway going down to the basement. So this you can see is pretty roughly finished, but this is not even the problem. The problem is when you go down these stairs and turn right, this picture on the right is your view. Okay. This is obviously unfinished area. I hope everyone agrees. You've got like a crawl space back here. You've got block wall. You've got duct work. It is a concrete floor, but this is non-living area. It would be disqualified for several different reasons. But this is the scan that this client got back from their vendor. All right. Shows the first floor, shows the lower level, and it shows both combined as living area. And I think the number they give is something like 2,100 square feet. So we had gone out and measured this property for the client. And what we noticed was this apartment down here is not connected to living area. And in North Carolina, that's one of the requirements is you can't leave living area, go through non-living area, and re-enter living area. So the two ways into this apartment are through this unfinished basement and from the outside. So it's a great apartment. It's awesome. You can rent it out, do whatever you want with it, but it's not living area. If this was a finished set of stairs and a finished area here, sure, because you're walking from finished area upstairs down into it, but there's just no way to get into it. And because the person doing this scan didn't know that about the North Carolina Real Estate Commission guidelines, they misrepresented the square footage on it. Now, this would be a pretty big deal, right? On a house this size, you're talking about a 2,100 square foot ranch. It should have been advertised at 1637. So a big issue. And if you received that drawing on the left, I'm not sure that everyone would know that there was a problem. You know, you're expected as an agent to know the real estate commission guidelines, but you get this really pretty sketch with these colors. You would think, hey, this looks right. You know, I was expecting around 2,000 square feet. Everything's good. And that's what happened. They went to market with it and then had to lower the size and lower the price. All right, next one. So this has to do with ceiling heights. I put a picture up in the top right of this room. It's one of those like bowling alley looking really long and narrow bonus rooms over a garage. Had a ceiling height problem. The way the real estate commission talks about rooms like this is really confusing. Is there's a 7-foot rule and a 5-foot rule, and I'll just briefly explain that because it'll help this make sense. More than 50% of the room has to be 7 feet or higher. And that's the first filter, and that's the way I train all my people. The first filter is at least 50% has to be 7 feet or higher. If the room does not pass that filter, the entire thing is out. You don't even get to the second filter, which is the 5-foot filter. And in this case, with this room, only about a third of it had a ceiling height of 7 feet, which means 2/3 was under 7 feet, which means the entire room was disqualified. All right. Not related to this case, but the 5-foot rule comes into play. If it passes that 7-foot filter, then you can include the room, but you have to take out anything under a 5-foot knee wall. All right. So with this one, we actually had one of our clients that always uses us on listings come to us and say that they had taken a buyer through this house and that something didn't feel right about the square footage and that bonus room. This scan is what was attached to the MLS. So this is where their listing agent got their square footage from, and they included that whole bonus room as living area because the scanning device didn't know about the low ceiling rule, didn't take it out. This middle drawing is the drawing that we did where we took out that area for low ceilings. When we shared this with the seller and the listing agent, they said, "No, I think you're wrong about that. Let me get this appraiser sketch that the seller has." And this is a little clip from the appraiser sketch. So, like I said before, appraisers should not be considered the gold standard on measurements. Sometimes they don't know the 7-foot rule. They don't understand it, and that was the case here. They didn't know about that rule, and they had also included it on a prior appraisal. So the bad thing with this is this thing's already been listed and exposed to the market, and now the seller has got to relist it with different lower square footage, lower the price. It's really just a bad situation for them. Last one here. This one came from Matterport. This scan came out of Matterport. And the way this one came to our attention is that I was doing this exact presentation at an office in downtown Raleigh, and I was going through and explaining how these scans work. And one of the agents just was sweating. She just kept like rubbing her forehead. She was getting, she was sweating through her shirt. And we got to the end of it, and I was taking questions, and she was like, put her hand up. She was like, Matt, I've got two listings that I just went active with, and they both have Matterport scans. And now I'm really scared because I thought that they were accurate. And everything you've said has made me just worried about them. Can you please go remeasure them? So we did. We went out same day to one of them and then the next day to the other one. It was in Rocky Mount, so it took us a minute to get to it. But what we did is this sketch that you see on the right. And this is a bit of an answer to your question earlier, Kate, where you were saying, how are we supposed to verify this? Because of the prevalence of these scans in our market area, we actually came up with this measuring service called a square footage inspection. You can see that it's missing all of the room dimensions. There's no patio, no balcony. We don't care about room labels. We only care about the square footage with this product. Think about it like a home inspection. You're inspecting the home to make sure it doesn't have any defects. This is a square footage inspection. We are just inspecting it to verify the square footage. If you were looking at this drawing on the left, if you got this from a professional, can anyone tell what's wrong with it? Or would you just go to market with that 1893 number? It is really hard. I'll be surprised if anybody can see it, but I want you all to look at it and see if you can tell what's wrong with it. And the square footage difference between these two is 271 square feet. Anybody have any guesses?
What about that void in the floor two?
It's a good guess. Yeah, there's this void here and there's a void here. Those we're allowed to include those. I don't know why they showed up black. My guess is that they were like a cabinet door that they didn't open when they scanned it, and that the scan just will show it as black. I don't know if they include that in the living area or not, but that's a good guess. That wouldn't make up for the 271 square feet, I think, that they were off, but that's a good guess. Any other guesses? Take a look at the numbers. I don't know how well you can see this on your screen, but there's a number for each of these floors, and then you can also see a number for each of the floors on my drawing, and see if that helps.
Does the little bump out window on the second floor have anything to do with it?
Nope. Good guess though. They both have it. Got a
The
bump out here.
garage is
Yes.
roughly 20 by 11, so that's what, 220, and
Mhm.
it seems 754 minus 220 would be like 530. So they've taken out too much square footage for that garage.
Yep, you got it, Judy. That was the first thing that jumped out at me, was that number being so different from the 560 that we had on ours. So then it was just a matter of figuring out, so what happened? Um, what happened is, for some reason, the scanning device stopped at the first floor right here at the end of the garage. And they only included this living room in the living area of the first floor, which is absurd. Um, that means they cut out the hallway, the closet, the stairs, the half bath, literally the entry to the property was all counted as non-living area, which is obviously not possible. So it's just an error. It is a scan error. I doubt that a human did that. A human would never think that this was non-living, but the device made the error. The device user didn't recognize the error, and the listing agent didn't recognize the error. This had already been listed on the market for 30 days. So this is a really unfortunate situation where you've already exposed it to the market at a certain price. The market has said, no, we don't want this, for 30 days. Now you find out you're actually 271 square feet bigger. You got to go back and tell your seller, hey, I made a mistake. Your house is actually more like 2164, but I don't think we can raise our price because we've already listed this and the market has said it doesn't want it. It might want it a little more now that it knows it's 271 square feet bigger, but there's no way you will sell this at the same price as one of the peers that would have just listed for in the first place at 2164. So it's really unfortunate. I mean, I don't know how this ended up getting resolved, but that seller really lost out on this one. So this is the only way you can verify it, is have someone come and manually measure the space and get the actual square footage. And some of these, like I've shown you, it is very difficult to tell where the error was. I looked at each of these and I found it out, but it's because I'm a nerd and I look at these all the time. It's easy for me to tell, but for you all, it would be difficult. So something to think about, and then we're going to move on to something else in the 3D tour space. Something for you to think about is if you are a buyer's agent and you're carrying around buyers looking at houses and you look at 10 houses with them, probably 2 or 3 of those houses that you look at are going to have a scan in the MLS as the source of square footage. If you are advising that buyer to make an offer, you're helping them to make an offer, and that scan is attached and you see that the number on the scan is exactly what's in the MLS, you may think about recommending that buyer to get a square footage inspection during the due diligence process. And the reason why is you really have no idea what the square footage is. And you're walking them through this process to put all this money into this thing, and you don't want a nasty surprise in 5 years when they go to sell it. So something to
Um,
think about.
I should know the answer to this, but it's been too
Yeah.
long since pre-licensing. Can you just go over again how stairways are counted in square footage?
Yes, of course. With a house like this, it's really straightforward. They're included. Oh, I see it, the word void here. Maybe that's what someone else was talking about earlier. That's not the problem, but the stairs are included in the area they ascend to and the area they descend from, not to exceed the opening in the floor. Okay. So in this one, this set of stairs is included on the first floor and it's included on the second floor. But this little void here, that's what they mean by except for areas that exceed the opening in the floor. So this opening exceeded the amount of space the stairs take up, and so that's why that little void is taken out. So we talked about ceiling heights earlier. Sometimes under the stairs, it's going to have a really low ceiling height. And with stairs, it doesn't matter. You can include the area under the stairs on that first floor, regardless of the ceiling height under the stairs. And if a set of stairs goes up and over a garage, like let's say instead of them being here, they turned and went up and over the garage to the second floor, that is included in the first floor as living area because you include it in the floor that it ascends from and the floor that it descends from, which I know is confusing. But yeah, stairs are one of the most complicated things for me to train someone on because some of it just doesn't make any sense. 2-story foyers, you only include the part where the stairs are. Anything that's outside of that, like the open part, you don't include for that reason.
But you're so basically counting it twice on the first floor and the second floor, the stairway.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. A lot of times this is an error that you'll see happen. I don't think I have a drawing that shows it, but when you've got this house may have, yeah, it did. Okay, this house did. If you look here, they had a 2-story foyer. All right, you're standing here in the foyer. You've got your stairs going up, and right above this word foyer is open. Okay, a lot of people will just draw a straight line across here, and they will not include this portion of the stairs. Can you all see my mouse where I'm moving? Okay, just want to make sure. So they'll draw a line across here and not include that set of stairs because they'll think, well, this is an open foyer. I'm not allowed to include that. And so you are allowed to include it all the way down to where it descends and touches the floor, but you're not allowed to include this area where the floor starts because this is all open. So this is an area where sometimes we're able to pick up an extra 60, 70, 80 square feet for a client because when it was measured in the past, they didn't include the stairs on the second floor. So one way to say that on a house like this is the stairs are double counted. Okay, I want to shift gears and talk about some of the technologies connected to this and some of the things that people call virtual tours. That word doesn't really mean a lot anymore, but we're going to take a look at some different examples. So the first one we're going to look at is Zillow 3D Home Tour. I know some of you in this office have used these. We're starting with this one because this one is by far my favorite one. I want everyone take the word Zillow and just kind of put your feelings about Zillow aside for a minute. I hate Zillow. I think that they literally want to destroy my industry and probably destroy your industry as well. So as we talk about this product, we call it Z3D or Zillow 3D. Z3D, we don't have to say the word Zillow. Um, the point of this product is not the product, it's what it does in the Zillow ecosystem. Okay. It's just a regular 360 tour where you can click around and view around the house. Nothing special about it. In fact, it's a little bit lower quality than a lot of other 3D tours. What's special about it is that Zillow desperately wants one of these attached to every address in their ecosystem. So they reward users for putting one in by boosting it to the top of the search results. So if you have a Zillow 3D tour on your listing and someone searches for homes like yours in your zip code, it's going to boost it to the top. Okay. It's also on the map view, like you see over here, it's going to flag it with this little 3D home that I'm sure you guys have seen when you're looking around in Zillow. Even if you hate Zillow, you don't have anything to do with it. This is where your buyers are at. The buyers are looking in here. You want to prove to your seller that this is what I'm doing to boost your house in our market area. I have done a Z3D tour and it is creating many more saves and views than we had before this. When this technology first came out and we were testing it, we were like, I don't know about this. It doesn't look that great. I'm not sure it's really worth it. Zillow has such a negative connotation. We were testing it out and we had one of our clients that's a flipper. She does about 5 flips a week with us. So a lot, very high production person. And we had her test it out on a couple. And she said her views and saves went up so much that she has started buying these on every single listing. So it'd be one thing if I was telling you about this and I was like, yeah, there's this client and she has 1 or 2 listings a year and she always does a Z3D. That would be one thing, right? This is a person that is spending, I think these are $125 or $150 per listing, which it's completely worth that to boost it. But she's spending that times 5 every week because of the stats she's seeing. So above Matterport, above all of the other add-ons you can put on a listing, this is the one we push people to because of what it actually does for your seller. And it's something you can show them. Say you've got a stagnant listing that's been out there for 2 or 3 weeks. Add one of these to it and you can show them immediate stats increase because of having this on there. So I'm a big believer in this product. Zillow doesn't make anything on this. They don't charge anything for it. We're not helping them other than getting more detail, more richer detail in their system, but it does a lot for your seller. So we really recommend the Z3D tour. It's kind of a screen cap of what it looks like. All right, Matterport. We're all familiar with Matterport. I won't spend a lot of time on it. It's got this, the trademark dollhouse view, which is really nice. We really only recommend these for higher end listings. The photography is much better. The level of detail, the color correction, all of those things are much better. You don't get the boost in Zillow. They're much more expensive. They're at least twice as much, sometimes more. And if you've ever been an agent at a listing where someone's doing Matterport, you know that you can't be in the house because you're going to get in the shots. You can't move anything in the house once it's started. And it can easily take 2 hours. It can take 3 hours. So for your seller, you have to tell them, look, you've got to get out of this house for 3 hours because my Matterport person's coming. So it's more expensive, takes forever, doesn't boost you in Zillow. That's why we really have kind of stopped recommending this. I know that for a while it was like during COVID especially, it was like you have to have Matterport. Everybody's doing Matterport. I don't think that's the case anymore. But it is out there. We will do it, but I don't recommend it as much. The last thing I want to talk to you all about in the space of like virtual tours and 3D tours is the idea of a property website versus a marketing kit. I know you all have heard of property websites. It's kind of like what a virtual tour used to be. So virtual tours, when they first came out, they were just a slideshow. It was your pictures you had taken with some music put behind it, okay? Property websites came along and they were a place you could go on the web that might have other details about the house, other neighborhood details, school details, maybe have a map. You could attach your floor plan to it. Okay, that's a property website. and people call that a virtual tour, but that's a property website. A marketing kit is where we've moved. So it's a place where you can put all of the visual assets in one place. If we measured it, photographed it, did a video, did a Z3D, all of that can all be in one place. And it can either just be at a weird random character URL, or it can be at 123mainstreet.com if you want to buy that domain. It's a landing place for everything. It has all your photos in high res. You know, our MLS compresses your photos. They're going to be in super high res on this property website. You can share it on social media. It's got contact forms where you can do some lead generation on it. That's kind of the idea of it. Good property websites have really great photos, videos, interactive floor plans, which we'll look at in just a second. It's going to have a detailed property description, neighborhood information, all of those things. I want to show you all a couple of examples of these. Okay, can you see this? Or are you still on the slide? Good? Okay, good. All right. This is a marketing kit we did for one of our clients. I'm going to show you two different ones for two different clients. And there's a lot here, so I'm going to try to go through it slowly and show you. This is, just so you know, as you're looking at this is a $40 add-on to any listing. And if you do it as a part of a bundle, it's even less than that. It's like $35. And it is, they call it a marketing kit because it is going to create so much marketing material for you. You will love it. So at the top here, you've got property information. This is where you can edit like the words you want to say about the property, the price of it, all of that kind of stuff. All right, here's what it comes with. It generates reels for you. All right, so it'll just take the photos you've already paid for and put them in a reel. These are like some springy templates that it's got in here. There's more templates you can use that don't have a super cheesy house like that, but it just will create reels you can share on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook. It'll also create stories like this where you can download it. It's going to put whatever images you want. It'll put your headshot in there. It'll put your logo in there, all of your information, the price, and you just download it and share it to your social media. You don't have to hire someone to do that for you. It's just there and free. It's included for you. Landscape posts, you can use these for Facebook or wherever else you'd want to share something that's more of a landscape orientation. Square posts for Instagram. Pinterest, if you wanted to share a whole strip on Pinterest like this. Slideshows, this is where it's going to be like your, all your, just like the old type slideshow where it's got all the pictures with music going behind it. You can download that, share that on social media. Several different templates, got branded, non-branded. Here's where you've got your property website. So let's go to this. Okay, so this is the property website that's got all the information about this property. They've added all this. They added this paragraph in here. You've got flyers they can download. You've got a floor plan here, all the photos. Got a contact form here, a map showing where it is. Let me go back to the marketing kit. Oh, let me exit out. Okay. So that's the property website. That's just one piece of the marketing kit. Down here, you've got all the themes you can change it to. If you don't like the way that property website look like, you can change all the themes. You've got flyers here. You know, if you're having to pay someone to make your flyers, this will do it for you. You just pick what pictures you want and get them printed. It's really nice. They've done this one here that's got a QR code. If I can click this. Oh, I see it's downloading. I don't think I can show you guys that. It's going to like open it in a separate viewer. Those are really nice. Got a weekly traffic report. This is what you can show your seller. Like, hey, I always do these on my listings. This is how much traffic we're getting. They're seeing all of the video and the high-res photos that we had taken of your house. You can see where they're coming from, where the leads are coming from. So that's a marketing kit. Just because of where we're at with time, I won't show you the other one, but that's a marketing kit. Highly recommend thinking about doing those for your listing. This is just a couple of other clients that did one and made their little postcards from it. Okay, that's the end. Went through a lot. We started with talking about what is the real estate commission saying about measurements? What are we supposed to do with these 3D tours that are generating floor plans and measurements? We talked about the difference between manual measurements and scanning technology. We talked about all these different 3D property tours that are out there, Z3D, Matterport. Talked about what a property website is, what a marketing kit is. Because I really want you all to understand what these words mean as they're flying around, as people are talking about them, as you see them on our website or other vendors' websites. I want you to understand, okay, when would I use this? What is this for? If I pay for this, how would I use it? Where would I use it? What can I expect from it? If I'm using Zillow 3D and it gives, because it will give you a little floor plan, can I just use that as my floor plan? And I hope you understand what you're going to get if you do that. It's not going to be as accurate as someone that manually measures it. So yeah, I want to stop there and open up for any questions you all have about anything that we talked about today.
So much good info, Matt. Thank you. I know when you and I were talking to put this on the calendar, my first thing was like, oh my gosh, hold up, let me go look at some of my old listings and make sure I did it correctly. So if that's how you're feeling after this session, I totally understand and definitely go look. I'd be curious, maybe put it in the Facebook group after we all meet and see where it lines up compared to what you've been doing. I've got one question in the chat. And then anyone else chime in. But Judy had mentioned earlier when you were going over the one that had the basement that was disconnected, it had the stairs that were super narrow. She asked, could you report that downstairs apartment as other living area, or how would they list that in MLS?
It would go in the other area below grade box in the MLS. Yeah, the word or phrase living area would never be attached to that lower level space.
What
I
would
think this is an area that our MLS is a little bit behind when it comes to like ADUs because they're becoming more popular and they're they're livable, they're finished area, but a lot of times they're out in the yard or they're down below like this. So I think there should be a better place for those in our MLS, but you wouldn't want to throw that in with the big living area number. I don't think anyone wants that, but I do think that that's an area that we need to be a little bit better on the MLS.
What about an area above our garage that's separate from the house? Is that other living area?
It's not. Like if you have the most amazing $100,000 guest house over a detached garage, it's not living area. You would have to build a finished and heated hallway leading outside to it and up to it because you can't ever leave living area to and then go into unfinished area and then go back into living area.
So what would that be listed under?
Oh, that would probably be other area above grade.
Okay. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Or I've
For
seen like a real
for
nice
the
man cave off the back of a garage, like because you go through a garage, you can't include whatever's past that garage as living area.
to get the Z3D, are you starting with Matterport, or what do you feed to it to get the Z3D?
Great question. No, Matterport's not involved at all. We have a 3D camera that we use. We set it up on a tripod in every room, and we take a few images in every room, and then that's what it's generated from. And the way it works, like if you were to have us go out today and like measure and photograph and do a Z3D, when we scan it, those images are linked almost immediately to the listing, but they don't go active until you tell it to go active because you may not be going active with the listing for 2 weeks, and we don't want a Z3D scan showing up like tomorrow of their house. So once you clear it to be active, it just goes live immediately. It's already in their system.
Okay, so I'm not in the Raleigh area. I'm in Charlotte now.
Okay.
So I would have to ask a photographer if they can do the Zillow 3D images.
That's right. That's right. You can get the Zillow 3D app on your phone and do the image capture that way. You can just kind of hold the phone around. It's a little bit distorted and not quite as good as a 3D camera. So I would start with asking a photographer if they can provide that for you.
So is the $40 your cost or is that Zillow's cost?
Oh, the $40 is for the marketing kit. The Zillow 3D is that the fee for that goes to our team members for the time to go out and do it and get it processed.
Okay, so we don't pay Zillow anything.
No, and we don't pay
Yay.
Zillow anything either. Yeah. No, it's just for our time.
Matt, I missed the introduction. Are you a photographer?
Yes, I am. I
Okay.
am. But I'm also an appraiser. I'm a weird combination of both.
So just putting you in my
Yeah.
phone so I know what services you provide. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, we didn't talk much about that. This is not really intended to be a sales pitch, but if you go to our website, you can see everything we do. We offer quite a few services. I did want to point out on this slide, if you haven't noticed it already, my personal cell and my email are there. If you're thinking about a question, too embarrassed to ask, just don't like asking me in a group like this, I would love for you to ask me. If you ever have, a sketch you want me to look at from online, you have a sketch for one of your own listings you want me to look at. I love looking at that stuff. I love comparing two sketches and figuring out why are these different? Why did someone measure this and then it was 100 square feet bigger on this? Part of my reason for doing this, and I think I said it on the last call, is I want to be a resource for this entire team. And any questions you have, I want to be helpful and help answer those.
And when this recording goes out, I'll make sure to include all of your contact info. So you guys will have that. You'll have his website and you can check everything out.
Okay, great.
Well, I think that's it for today. If you guys have any other questions, you know where to find him or you know where to find us. Thank you for starting your day with us, Matt. As always, thanks for sharing your knowledge. We really value these sessions with you. They're so insightful. And it's not often that you get a bunch of agents that have been in the business for a while that have a moment to stop and pause and say, oh gosh, I still need to reevaluate. So thanks for being that person to us and giving us a reason to evaluate our systems and make sure we're always showing up to the fullest for our clients. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.